My best friend uninvited me from her wedding photos because my face would ruin the aesthetic. When I asked her why, she rolled her eyes and said, "Your scarring might draw attention." I stayed silent. I only had that scar because I took a bullet to the face for her. She named her baby after me, but wouldn't let me be in her wedding photos because I ruined the pastel aesthetic. We were at a music festival when it happened. I still hear the shots sometimes when I'm half asleep. The chaos, the screams, Claire's hand gripping mine so hard I thought it might snap. I turned toward the noise and tried to shield her. I took one in the shoulder and another grazed the side of my face. Later, the doctor said the bullet barely missed my carotid, took off part of my ear, shattered the bone. Claire cried in the hospital, held my hand, told me I was her hero. She called my mom to update her. She sat with me through the first few days. Then it was like she just let go. Her visits got shorter, then she stopped showing up. I spiraled. I couldn't sleep without meds. My face was lopsided from the swelling. I kept having panic attacks in the shower. People stared at the pharmacy. My body looked wrong. I couldn't recognize my voice. Claire, meanwhile, looked like a blooming rose. She got a pixie cut, started volunteering. She posted about survivor strength. When people asked if she knew me, she said, "I owe her my life." But when I texted her to hang out, she said she was healing differently and needed emotional boundaries. 2 years later, she was engaged. Pastel wedding, beachside, early summer. She asked if I could do a reading during the ceremony. I was surprised, but I said yes. Then I got the real message. A week later, she said her wedding planner recommended the bridal party look visually cohesive and that my scarring might draw attention. Said maybe I could still come, but it would be better if I didn't sit in the front or appear in too many photos. I told her I understood. I didn't. Then a few days before the wedding, she posted a tribute to me, called me her guardian angel, said I couldn't make it because weddings can be emotionally overwhelming. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I closed the app. The day before her wedding, I recorded a video on my phone. Just me, sitting in front of a window. I said everything I needed to say. I said I was happy she survived. I said I wished I hadn't. I said sometimes I still wake up reaching for her hand. I sent it to her sister. I didn't expect her to watch it. Turns out the sister included it in the reception slideshow. They were playing photos of the bachelorette trip when it cut to me, sitting in silence. Then my voice filled the room. Claire stormed out. Later that night, she texted me, "I can't believe you would try to make my wedding about you." I didn't reply. A month later, she sent me a message saying she wanted to name her second daughter after me. Said it was her way of honoring what we went through together. I told her to never contact me again. I can't help but think, one day, that little girl might grow up and ask where her name came from, and Claire will have to tell her, or lie, and either way, she'll remember me. I thought I'd never even hear about her again, until the groom showed up at my front door. I was making coffee when the doorbell rang. It was a Tuesday morning, one of those gray October days where the light never quite breaks through. I wasn't expecting anyone. My physical therapy appointment wasn't until Thursday, and the grocery delivery had come the day before. I looked through the people and saw a guy in a suit, navy blue, expensive looking, dark hair, tired eyes. There was something familiar about the slope of his shoulders, the way he kept checking his phone. I recognized him from the wedding photos Claire had posted. Her husband, Roger. My hand hesitated on the deadbolt. Part of me wanted to pretend I wasn't home, let him ring the bell until he gave up and left. But curiosity won. I opened the door halfway, keeping the chain on. He looked uncomfortable, like his collar was too tight. He kept shifting his weight from foot to foot. I asked what he wanted. He said he needed to talk to me about Claire. Said it was important. His voice cracked on her name. I almost shut the door. The last thing I needed was more drama from Claire's world, but something in his face stopped me. He looked lost, the way I'd felt in those first weeks after the shooting when nothing made sense anymore. I undid the chain and let him in. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd eaten countless meals alone, where I'd sorted through medical bills and insurance paperwork. He kept staring at my scars, the puckered skin where the bullet had torn through my shoulder, the jagged line along my jaw, the missing piece of my ear that I usually kept hidden under my hair. Then he'd catch himself and look away, focusing intently on the salt shaker or the fruit bowl. I poured him coffee. Black, no sugar. I could tell he was that type. He wrapped his hands around the mug like he was cold, even though my apartment was warm. He said Claire had been acting strange since the wedding. Said she'd been having nightmares, waking up screaming. Said she kept talking about me in her sleep, calling my name. He wanted to know what really happened between us. His wedding ring caught the light as he gestured. Platinum and perfect. I told him to ask his wife. He said he had, multiple times. Said she just cried and told him I was obsessed with her. Said I'd been stalking her since the shooting. That I couldn't accept that people grow apart. Said I'd tried to ruin their wedding out of jealousy. That I was bitter about my injuries and taking it out on her. I laughed. Actually laughed. A harsh sound that made him flinch. He looked confused, maybe a little scared. I went to my bedroom and grabbed my phone from the nightstand. I had screenshots saved in a folder labeled evidence. Everything. Every message, every post, every contradiction. The messages where she uninvited me from photos, citing the wedding planner's advice about aesthetics. The ones where she lied about why I wasn't coming, spinning tales of my emotional fragility. The tribute post she made while telling me not to show up, gathering likes and hearts from people who didn't know the truth. I showed him everything. He read in silence, scrolling slowly. His face got paler with each screenshot. When he got to the part about the wedding planner and visual cohesion, he put the phone down and rubbed his eyes. He asked if there was more. I said there was always more with Claire. Always another version of the story, another angle to work. I told him about the hospital, how she'd held my hand in the ICU and promised to be there for me, how she'd called me her hero in front of the nurses, how she'd disappeared when things got hard, when the surgeries didn't fix everything, when I still looked different, how she'd used my story for sympathy at parties and fundraisers while avoiding me in person, how she'd posted about survivor's guilt while I was learning to sleep without nightmares. He said he didn't know any of this. Said she'd told him I was her best friend who saved her life. Said she'd cried about losing me to trauma, made it sound like I'd pushed her away, like I'd become too damaged to maintain our friendship. I showed him more messages, the ones where I begged her to visit, just for an hour, where I told her I was scared of the dark now, scared of crowds, scared of loud noises, where she said she needed space to process her own trauma, while posting selfies at brunch with other friends, at concerts, at all the places we used to go together. Roger's hands were shaking now, coffee sloshed over the rim of his mug. He asked why I sent the video to her sister. I told him I wanted someone to know the truth, just one person who might understand. Didn't expect it to play at the reception. Her sister Megan had always been the quieter one, the one who noticed things. I thought maybe she'd watch it privately, maybe talk to Claire. I never imagined she'd include it in the slideshow. He said Claire had told everyone I'd planned it, said I'd manipulated her sister, her, played on her sympathies, said I was trying to destroy her happiness because I couldn't move on from the shooting, couldn't accept that she had. I asked him why he was really here, what he wanted from me. He was quiet for a long moment, staring at his coffee like it might have answers. He said Claire was pregnant again, 4 months along, said she'd already picked out names, said if it was a girl she wanted to use my name, my full name, not just a variation, said she'd been insistent about it, almost manic. I felt sick. The room tilted slightly. He said he'd tried to talk her out of it, said it felt wrong after everything, after the wedding, after the video, but she'd insisted it was the right thing to do, said it would honor our friendship, honor what I'd done for her, said it would be her way of making amends without actually having to face me. He asked if I had any other messages, anything that might help him understand who he'd married. I did. I had folders full of them. Years of friendship before the shooting, years of slow abandonment after, the gradual shift from I love you to I need space to silence. I showed him the message she'd sent me 3 months after the shooting, when I was still in physical therapy. She'd written about how hard it was to see me in pain, how it triggered her own trauma, how she needed to focus on her own healing. Meanwhile, her Instagram showed her at a music festival, the same venue where we'd almost died. Roger set down my phone. He looked older than when he'd arrived, like the past hour had aged him years. He asked me what I wanted, what would make this right. I told him nothing could make it right. The scars were permanent. The hearing loss in my left ear was permanent. The way I flinched at backfiring cars was probably permanent too. But I didn't want his wife using my name for her child. Didn't want some little girl carrying that weight, that lie. He nodded slowly, said he'd talk to her, said he'd try to make her understand. Then he asked me something that surprised me. I thought about it, really thought about it. About that split-second decision to turn toward the gunfire, to put my body between Claire and danger. About all the what-ifs that haunted me at 3 a.m. He left after that. I watched from my window as he sat in his car for a long time before driving away. I wondered what he'd tell Claire. I wondered if she'd finally see herself clearly, or if she'd just find a new story to tell. 2 weeks later, I got a letter from a lawyer. Claire was seeking a restraining order, said I'd been harassing her family, said her husband's visit had been uninvited and traumatic, said she feared for her safety and the safety of her unborn child. I laughed again, because what else could I do? She'd found her new story after all, and I was still the villain, but at least now her husband knew the truth, and maybe, just maybe, that little girl would get a different name. I called my lawyer that afternoon, not because I was worried about the restraining order, I had enough evidence to fight it, but because I was tired of being the bad guy in Claire's story, tired of defending myself against her lies, tired of wondering how someone I'd literally taken a bullet for could erase me so completely. My lawyer, Andrea, said the restraining order was flimsy at best, said Claire would need actual evidence of harassment, not just her word. I had one text telling her not to contact me. That was it. No calls, no visits, no social media interaction. Andrea said to save everything and wait. These things usually fell apart on their own. She'd seen it before, people using the legal system as a weapon in personal disputes, but Claire wasn't done. 3 days later, my neighbor knocked on my door. Janet from 4B, the one who always complained about delivery trucks blocking the entrance. She looked uncomfortable, kept glancing over her shoulder like she was afraid of being seen. She said someone had been asking about me. A woman with short blonde hair, said she was concerned about my mental state, said I'd been through trauma and might be dangerous. I knew it was Claire before Janet even finished describing her. The pixie cut gave it away. Janet said Claire had been very convincing, very worried, said she was just looking out for everyone's safety, asked if I'd been acting strange lately, if I'd had any visitors, if I'd mentioned anything about revenge or feeling wronged. I thanked Janet and closed the door. My hands were shaking. Claire was poisoning my own building against me. I called Andrea again. She said to document everything, get it in writing if possible, build a case. She suggested I email Janet to thank her, creating a paper trail of the conversation. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Roger's face when he read those messages, the way his whole worldview had cracked. I wondered if he'd confronted Claire. I wondered what lies she'd told him to explain it all away. The bedroom felt too quiet, too empty, filled with questions I couldn't answer. The next morning, I found out. Roger called from a number I didn't recognize. His voice was rough, like he'd been yelling or crying or both. He said Claire had admitted to some of it, but she'd spun it differently. Said she'd been trying to protect me from the media attention around the wedding. Said the wedding planner had insisted, and she'd gone along to spare my feelings. Said she'd planned to include me in private celebrations, but I'd lashed out before she could explain. He said she'd cried for hours. Said she felt horrible about how things had turned out, but she still insisted the video was an attack, that I'd tried to humiliate her on her wedding day. She'd shown him text messages I'd apparently sent her. Angry ones, threatening ones, messages I'd never written. I told him those were fake. He said he knew. The timestamps didn't match up. Some were supposedly sent while I was still in surgery. Claire wasn't as clever as she thought, but she was convincing. She'd always been convincing. It was her superpower, making people believe her version of reality. Roger said his family was involved now. His mother had seen the video at the wedding, had questions. His sister had started digging into social media posts. They'd found inconsistencies. Claire's story kept changing depending on who she talked to. Some friends had been told I was too traumatized to attend. Others heard I was jealous of her happiness. A few were told I'd become unstable, possibly dangerous. He said Claire was panicking. She'd started deleting old posts, old photos, but people had screenshots. Her own bridesmaids were comparing notes, realizing they'd all been told different versions of why I wasn't in the wedding party. The carefully constructed narrative was unraveling thread by thread. I asked him why he was telling me this. He said he didn't know what else to do. Said he felt like he'd married a stranger. Said he kept replaying every conversation, looking for lies. Said he couldn't trust anything anymore. His voice broke when he mentioned their unborn child. 2 days later, Megan called. Claire's sister, the one who'd played my video at the reception. She was crying. Said Claire had cut her off completely. Blamed her for ruining the wedding, for destroying her marriage. Said the family was in chaos. Their parents were taking sides. Their brother was trying to stay neutral. Megan told me she'd suspected something was off for a while. Said Claire's stories never quite added up. The timeline of our friendship's end didn't match what she'd observed. She'd seen Claire posting from parties while claiming to be too traumatized to leave the house. She'd noticed how Claire only mentioned me when it benefited her narrative. She said she'd played the video because she thought Claire needed to hear it, needed to face what she'd done. She hadn't expected Claire to storm out, hadn't expected the family explosion that followed, but she wasn't sorry. The truth needed to come out. Megan said more people were asking questions now. Claire's college roommate had reached out, confused about some things Claire had said. Her coworkers were comparing sharing stories. The image Claire had carefully crafted was cracking like old paint under pressure. Then Megan told me something that made my blood run cold. Claire had been telling people I'd stalked her after the shooting, that I'd shown up at her work, her gym, her parents' house, that she'd had to move apartments to get away from me. None of it was true. I'd been in physical therapy most of that time, could barely leave my apartment, but people believed her. Why wouldn't they? She was the victim who'd survived a mass shooting. I was the friend who'd gone crazy after. I pulled out my calendar from that time. Medical appointments, therapy sessions, pharmacy runs. My life had been carefully documented by necessity. I had receipts, appointment cards, signed forms, proof that I'd been nowhere near Claire's supposed sightings, physical therapy logs showing I could barely walk, let alone stalk someone across town. Andrea said it was good evidence, said to keep gathering documentation. The restraining order hearing was in 2 weeks. Claire would have to prove her claims. Andrea was confident we could hit it. She'd already filed for my medical records, creating an official timeline of my recovery, but Claire wasn't backing down. A week before the hearing, things escalated. I came home from physical therapy to find my door slightly open. Nothing was missing, but things had been moved. My papers shuffled. My laptop opened. Someone had been in my apartment. The feeling of violation was overwhelming. I called the building manager. He said no one had requested access. The security footage was conveniently corrupted for that time period. I filed a police report, but without evidence of theft or damage, they couldn't do much. The officer seemed sympathetic but said his hands were tied. That night, my phone rang at 3 a.m. unknown number. When I answered, there was just breathing, then a whisper. Stop talking to him. The voice was disguised, but I knew. It was either Claire or someone she'd sent. The call lasted only seconds, but the threat lingered. I recorded everything, downloaded call recording apps, set up a security camera in my apartment, started varying my routine. I felt paranoid, but Andrea said I was being smart. Document everything, build the case. She gave me the number for a security consultant just in case. Roger called again the next day, said Claire had given him an ultimatum, her or me. Stop digging into the past or lose his family. She was 7 months pregnant now. Use the baby as leverage. Said the stress was dangerous, could cause complications. Said he was putting their child at risk. He sounded broken. Said his family was pressuring him to leave her. His sister had done more research, found other people Claire had cut off over the years. There was a pattern. Close friendships that ended suddenly, always with the other person painted as unstable or obsessive, always with Claire as the victim. He'd found her ex-boyfriend from college, the one she'd said stalked her after their breakup. Turns out he'd just asked for his stuff back. She'd spun it into a campaign of harassment, got him suspended from school. He'd had to transfer to finish his degree, lost his scholarship in the process. There was her freshman roommate who'd supposedly bullied her. Reality. She'd asked Claire to stop using her expensive shampoo. Claire had turned their entire friend group against her, made her out to be petty and cruel. The girl had switched dorms mid-semester to escape. The coworker who'd sabotaged her promotion. She'd actually just applied for the same position. Claire had started rumors about her work ethic, her personal life. The woman had quit to escape the hostile environment Claire created, lost a job she'd loved because of whispers and lies. Roger said he was scared, not of Claire exactly, but of what she was capable of how easily she twisted reality, of how many people believed her without question. He said he'd started recording their conversations, said he needed proof of who she really was, said he felt like he was losing his mind. I told him to be careful. Claire was dangerous when cornered. She'd already broken into my apartment or had someone do it. She was escalating. He said he knew, said he'd installed cameras in their house without telling her, said he'd opened a separate bank account, started moving money, said he was planning to leave after the baby was born, wanted to make sure he got custody. 3 days before the restraining order hearing, everything exploded. Someone leaked the wedding video online. Not just my part, the whole reception, including Claire storming out, the confused guests, the awkward aftermath. It went viral in our city's Facebook groups. Bride's meltdown after surprise video got thousands of shares. People started recognizing Claire from her survivor posts, started asking questions. Why was she so upset about a video from someone who saved her life? What was the real story? The comment section became a battlefield. Some defended her, others demanded answers. Claire's carefully maintained image shattered in real time. People who donated to her survivor fund wanted answers. Organizations where she'd spoken about trauma and healing started distancing themselves. The local news picked it up, wanted interviews. Her perfect victim narrative was crumbling. She blamed me, of course, said I'd leaked it for revenge, but the metadata showed it came from someone at the wedding, one of Roger's cousins who'd been filming for fun. He'd posted it to shame Claire for her reaction, not knowing the full story. But once it was out there, the truth followed. Megan went public with her side, posted screenshots of Claire's messages, the different stories she'd told different people. Other bridesmaids came forward. They'd all been given reasons why I couldn't be included, none of them matching. The web of lies was finally visible to everyone. The restraining order hearing was a disaster for Claire. She showed up looking perfect, of course. Soft pink dress, subtle makeup, hair pulled back to show her face. The grieving survivor, still haunted by trauma. But her evidence was thin. The fake messages had timestamps that didn't match. Her claims of stalking fell apart when I presented my medical records. Andrea systematically destroyed every accusation. The judge asked Claire directly why she'd excluded me from the wedding. She started crying, said it was complicated, said she'd been trying to protect everyone. The judge wasn't buying it, asked for specifics. Claire stumbled over her words, contradicted herself, said the wedding planner had insisted, then said it was her decision, then said she couldn't remember exactly. When Andrea showed the messages about visual cohesion and aesthetics, Claire's lawyer objected, said they were taken out of context, but there was no context that made those words acceptable. No spin that could turn, your scarring might draw attention into kindness. The judge's face said everything. The restraining order was denied. Claire left in tears, Roger trailing behind her. He looked at me as they passed, mouthed, I'm sorry. I just nodded. We were both trapped in Claire's web, just in different ways, both trying to break free. But Claire wasn't done. That night, she posted on social media a long, rambling message about victimization and betrayal, how the shooting had destroyed her life in ways people couldn't understand, how she'd tried to protect me from my own bitterness, but I'd turned everyone against her, how pregnant women shouldn't have to endure such stress. The comments were brutal. People had seen the evidence now. They weren't buying her victim act anymore. Some defended her, said trauma made people act strangely, but most saw through it, saw the pattern of lies and manipulation, called her out for using tragedy as a weapon. Roger called me that night, said Claire had locked herself in their bedroom, was refusing to come out, said she kept screaming about how I'd ruined everything, how I should have just died at the concert. He'd recorded it all, every horrible single word, every revelation of her true feelings. He said he was leaving in the morning. His family had a rental property where he could stay. His lawyer, not Andrea, but someone his sister recommended, said he had enough evidence for custody. The recordings, the lies, the break-in at my apartment that he was pretty sure Claire had arranged. He'd found searches on her laptop for lockpicking services. I told him I was sorry it had come to this. He laughed bitterly. Said he should have known something was wrong when she described me as her hero, but wouldn't let me in the wedding photos. Said love had made him stupid. Said he'd ignored every red flag. The next morning, my phone exploded with texts. Claire had gone into early labor. Stress-induced, the post said. She was blaming me, of course. Said the restraining order hearing had pushed her over the edge. Said if anything happened to the baby, it would be my fault. But Roger had already left. He'd moved out while she was at her mother's the night before. Took only what he needed, left a note with his lawyer's contact information. Claire came home to an empty house and went into labor an hour later. Her mother called me from the hospital. Actually called me after everything. Said Claire was asking for me. Said she was sorry. Said she needed to make things right. I didn't go. I couldn't. Andrea said it was likely a trap anyway. Another manipulation. Another chance to play victim. The baby was fine. A healthy girl. Born 3 weeks early but perfect. Claire named her Sophia. Not after me. Roger had won that battle at least. He filed for divorce the same week, citing emotional abuse and fraud. The evidence was overwhelming. Claire tried to fight it. Hired an expensive lawyer. Made accusations of abandonment. But Roger had been smart. The recordings, the documentation, the pattern of behavior, it all painted a clear picture. Even her own family was starting to see the truth. Megan reached out to me throughout the divorce proceedings. Said Claire was spiraling. She'd lost her job after the viral video. Lost most of her friends when the truth came out. She'd tried to start over with new people, but the internet remembered. Someone always recognized her. Always brought up the wedding video. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not pity, just empty. The girl who'd been my best friend was gone. Had been gone since the shooting. Maybe even before. Maybe I'd just been too close to see who she really was. Roger got primary custody. Claire got supervised visits. The judge cited her pattern of deception and manipulation as concerning. Said she needed therapy before she could be trusted with unsupervised access. Claire posted about it, of course. Made herself the victim again. Said the system had failed her. That nobody understood the trauma she'd endured. But fewer people listened now. Her audience had shrunk to a handful of enablers who believed every word. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I ran into Roger at the grocery store. He had Sophia with him, strapped to his chest in a carrier. She had Claire's eyes but his dark hair. He looked tired but peaceful. We talked for a few minutes. He said therapy was helping. Said he was learning to trust his own judgment again. Said Sophia was thriving. He'd moved back in with his family for support. His mother adored the baby. Helped with childcare while he worked. He said Claire still tried to contact him. Still sent messages about how I'd destroyed their family. How if I'd just accepted my place, none of this would have happened. He didn't respond anymore. His lawyer handled all communication. Before we parted, he thanked me. Said if I hadn't kept those messages, if I hadn't shown him the truth, he might have spent years trapped in her web. Might have raised Sophia to believe the lies. Now she had a chance at normal. I watched them leave. This little family that had emerged from so much chaos. And I felt something shift inside me. Not healing exactly, but movement. The first crack in the ice I'd wrapped around myself since the shooting. I started therapy again. Real therapy this time, not just the physical stuff. Started talking about Claire, about the friendship we'd had and lost, about the guilt I carried for surviving when part of me had wished I hadn't, about the anger I'd buried under politeness. My therapist said trauma could reveal who people really were. Said Claire had shown her true self when faced with the reality of my injuries. Said I'd shown mine when I turned toward danger to protect her. Neither of us could change what we'd revealed. Slowly, I started rebuilding. Made friends at physical therapy, joined a support group for survivors, started telling my story, the real one, not Claire's version. People believed me. They'd seen the evidence, seen the video, seen the pattern. A year later, I was at a coffee shop when a woman approached me. She looked nervous, kept fidgeting with her sleeve. She said she'd seen the wedding video, said Claire had done something similar to her in high school, cut her off, spread rumors, made her out to be obsessed and unstable. She'd never had proof, so nobody believed her. We talked for 2 hours. She wasn't the only one. Once the truth about Claire came out, others had started sharing their stories. There was a whole network of people she'd hurt over the years. We formed a strange sort of club, bonded by the experience of being erased from Claire's narrative. I heard updates occasionally. Claire had moved to another state, tried to start fresh. But the internet has a long memory. The wedding video followed her. The divorce records were public. She'd changed her name, her hair, her whole appearance. But someone always figured it out. Last I heard, she was working retail somewhere, living in a small apartment. She got Sophia every other weekend, supervised by a court-appointed monitor. Roger said she spent the visits taking photos for social media, trying to project the image of a devoted mother. He'd remarried. A teacher named Julie who'd never heard of Claire before they met. She was good with Sophia, patient and kind. They were talking about having more kids, building the family Roger had thought he'd have with Claire. And me? I was okay. The scars were still there. The hearing loss was permanent. I still flinched at loud noises, but I'd stopped hiding, stopped letting Claire's narrative define me. I'd taken control of my own story. Sometimes I wondered what would have happened if I hadn't turned toward the shooter that day. If Claire had been the one hit instead of me, would I have stayed by her side? Would I have included her in my wedding? I like to think I would have, but I'll never know for sure. What I do know is this. Claire named her baby Sophia instead of after me, and that was the best gift she ever gave me. That little girl would grow up without the weight of my name, without the burden of a lie. She'd have a chance to write her own story, and so would I. The coffee shop encounter opened something in me, like a dam with a tiny crack that suddenly gives way. More people started reaching out. DMs on social media, emails through mutual friends, all with similar stories about Claire. There was Gabriel from her marketing job. He'd trained her when she started. She'd accused him of inappropriate behavior when he got promoted instead of her. He'd had to switch departments. HR had found no evidence, but the damage was done. His reputation never fully recovered. And Victoria from her book club. She'd questioned one of Claire's survivor stories. The timeline didn't add up. Claire had her kicked out of the group. Told everyone Victoria was minimizing her trauma. The woman lost her entire social circle over asking a simple question. Each story was the same pattern. Claire would get close to someone, use them, then destroy them when they became inconvenient. Always playing victim. Always emerging smelling like roses while others picked up the pieces. I started a spreadsheet, not for revenge or anything, just to understand the scope. 23 people over 15 years, all with documented proof of Claire's lies. lies, all afraid to speak up because who believes the villain in someone else's victim story? Then Roger called with news. Claire was pregnant again. New boyfriend. Some guy named Bruce she'd met at her retail job. He was older, going through his own divorce. She'd told him she was a widow. Said Roger had died in a car accident when Sophia was a baby. Roger found out through his lawyer. Bruce's ex-wife had done a background check when she heard about Claire. Found the divorce records, the custody arrangement, the whole mess. She'd reached out to Roger's lawyer to compare notes. Bruce's ex said he'd already started isolating from his family. Said Claire was convincing him they were all toxic. Classic Claire move. I'd seen it before. She'd tried it with me and my family before the shooting. Little comments about how they didn't really support me, how I deserved better. Roger was panicking. He didn't want Sophia exposed to another round of Claire's chaos. His lawyer said there wasn't much they could do unless Claire violated the custody agreement. Dating someone new wasn't illegal, even if she was lying to him. I did something I probably shouldn't have. I reached out to Bruce through LinkedIn. Just a simple message saying I was an old friend of Claire's and had some information he might want to know. I attached the wedding video and a link to the public divorce records. He read it but didn't respond. 2 weeks later, Claire showed up at my apartment building. Not at my door. She knew better after the restraining order attempt, but in the lobby, waiting. She looked different, harder somehow. The pixie cut had grown out into a messy bob. She wore all black, no more pastels. She said I needed to stop. Said she was trying to build a new life and I was sabotaging her. Said she'd made mistakes but didn't deserve to be stalked and harassed. The security guard was watching, and I knew she was performing for him. I stayed calm, told her to leave or I'd call the police. She started crying then. Not the pretty tears from before, but ugly sobs. Said she'd lost everything because of me. Her career, her marriage, her reputation. Said I'd won. Wasn't that enough? I asked her one question. Why couldn't she just let me be in the wedding photos? That's all I wanted to know. After everything, why was my appearance such a problem? She stopped crying, looked at me with something like disgust. Said I knew why. Said looking at me reminded her of the worst day of her life. That every scar was a reminder of how close she'd come to dying. That she'd wanted one perfect day without thinking about death, and I'd ruined it. I laughed. Told her she thought about death every day when she used it for sympathy. When she told survivor stories at parties. When she posted inspiration quotes over sunset photos. She didn't want to forget the shooting. She wanted to forget that I was there too. The security guard stepped forward then. Asked if everything was okay. Claire switched back to victim mode instantly. Said she was just trying to talk to an old friend, but I was being hostile. He looked at me, and I just shook my head. I went upstairs and called Andrea. She said to file a report, create a record. Claire showing up violated the spirit of the denied restraining order, even if not the letter. We needed documentation in case she escalated. Bruce finally responded to my message a week later. He wanted to meet. We chose a public place, a busy Starbucks downtown. He looked exhausted, like Roger had that first day at my apartment. That same lost expression of someone realizing they'd been living in a fantasy. He said Claire had told him so many lies he didn't know where to start. The dead husband's story was just the beginning. She'd said she was independently wealthy from Roger's life insurance. Said she worked retail by choice to stay grounded. Said Sophia's supervised visits were because Roger's family was trying to steal her baby. The truth had unraveled when he'd mentioned wanting to see Roger's grave, to pay respects to the man whose child he was helping raise. Claire had broken down, admitted Roger was alive but said he was abusive. Changed her story 3 times in one conversation. Bruce had already left her, moved back in with his brother while he figured things out. But Claire was 4 months pregnant with his child. He was trapped in a different way than Roger had been. No marriage to divorce, but a baby coming anyway. He asked me what he should do. I told him to talk to Roger's lawyer, to document everything, to get ready for a fight, because Claire didn't give up easily. He looked sick at the prospect. Said he thought he'd found someone special, someone who understood loss and pain. I told him Claire understood those things. She just wielded them like weapons instead of healing from them. He nodded slowly, processing. Asked if I regretted saving her that day at the concert. I'd been asked that question so many times, by therapists, by friends, by strangers on the internet. The answer was always complicated, but sitting there with Bruce, watching another life get tangled in Claire's web, it felt simple. I told him no. I didn't regret saving her. I regretted not seeing who she really was sooner. But the action itself, turning toward danger to protect someone I loved, that was who I was. Claire's response was who she was. Neither of us could change our nature. Bruce left looking marginally less destroyed. He had a plan now, people to contact. I'd given him Andrea's information and Roger's lawyer's number. The network of Claire's victims had become a support system of sorts. 2 months later, the local news ran a segment on survival, guilt, and friendship. They'd interviewed Claire without fact-checking her story. She sat there in soft lighting, talking about losing her best friend to trauma, how she'd tried to include me in her healing journey, but I'd become fixated on her. The backlash was immediate. People who knew the truth flooded the station's social media, posted screenshots, links to the wedding video, the whole history. The segment got pulled from their website within hours, but the damage was done. Claire lost her retail job. Apparently, customers had started recognizing her, asking uncomfortable questions. One woman had confronted her at the register, called her a liar in front of everyone. Management decided she was too much drama. She tried to file for unemployment, claiming wrongful termination, but there were multiple customer complaints on record. Security footage of her arguing with shoppers. She'd been warned twice before the final incident. No case. Bruce's baby was born in the spring, a boy named Arthur. Bruce got a better lawyer than Roger had initially. He'd learned from Roger's mistakes, documented everything from day one. He filed for custody before Arthur was even born. Claire fought it, of course. Claimed Bruce had abandoned her while pregnant. But his lawyer had prepared for that. They had proof of her lies, the dead husband story, the fake wealth claims. The judge ordered a psychological evaluation. I don't know the exact results. Those records were sealed. But Bruce got primary custody from day one. Claire got supervised visits again, same as with Sophia. 2 babies, 2 different fathers, same restricted access. She tried to spin it on social media, posted about the system failing mothers, about gender bias in family court, but her audience had dwindled to almost nothing. Most of her followers were bots, or people keeping tabs on the drama. Roger and Bruce ended up becoming friends. Weird situation, but they bonded over their shared experience. They coordinated custody schedules so Claire's visits with both kids happened on the same days. Made it easier for everyone, including the court-appointed supervisor. Julie, Roger's new wife, was pregnant by then. They were having twins. Roger sent me a baby announcement, a small gesture that meant more than he probably knew. We weren't friends exactly, but we'd been through something together. Survived Hurricane Claire. Around that time, I started dating someone. A physical physical therapist named Jordan who worked at a different clinic. They'd never heard of Claire or the shooting or any of it. It was nice, starting fresh with someone who saw me as more than my scars or my story. Jordan was patient with my quirks, the way I always sat facing the door, how I needed to know where exits were. They didn't push when I wasn't ready to talk about certain things, just accepted me as I was. We'd been together 6 months when Claire tried one last play. She showed up at my work. I was a medical billing specialist by then, working at a small practice. She walked in during my lunch break, Sophia on her hip during one of her supervised visits. The supervisor was there, looking uncomfortable. Claire said Sophia had been asking about me, said she talked about me all the time, wanted to meet her namesake. It was a lie, obviously. Sophia wasn't named after me, and at barely 2 years old, she wasn't asking about anyone. I looked at that little girl, Claire's daughter, who looked so much like her mother. She was chewing on a toy, oblivious to the drama, innocent in all of this mess. I felt sorry for her, growing up with Claire's chaos. I told Claire to leave. The supervisor apologized, said Claire had insisted on stopping by, said it wouldn't happen again. I watched them walk away, Claire's shoulders rigid with anger. Sophia waved bye-bye over her mother's shoulder. I waved back. That night, I made a decision. I was done being part of Claire's story, done being the villain or the victim or whatever role she needed me to play. I blocked her on everything, changed my phone number, made my social media private. The others from our survivor network understood. Some followed suit, cutting Claire off completely. Others kept watching from a distance, unable to look away from the ongoing train wreck. We all coped differently. A year passed without incident. I heard updates through Roger occasionally. Claire had lost the supervised visits after showing up somewhere she wasn't supposed to be, Bruce's mother's house. She'd wanted to introduce herself, make peace. It had not gone well. She was allowed letters and video calls with the kids, monitored of course. Roger said she spent most of the calls taking screenshots for social media, trying to maintain the image of devoted mother despite the reality. I got engaged to Jordan on a Thursday night in October. Nothing fancy, just dinner at home and a ring I'd picked out myself. We planned a small wedding, 20 people max. No pastels, no aesthetic, no wedding planner, just us and the people who mattered. I didn't think about Claire when addressing invitations. She wasn't part of my life anymore. Hadn't been since that day in the hospital when she'd started pulling away. The shooting had ended our friendship. Everything after was just the long, messy process of accepting that truth. The wedding was perfect in its simplicity. My scars visible in every photo and nobody cared. Jordan's family had questions at first, but they were kind about it. My mom cried during the ceremony. My dad walked me down the aisle. Normal, boring, beautiful stuff. We honeymooned in Colorado. Mountains and quiet and no crowds. I could breathe there. Could sleep without nightmares for the first time in years. Jordan held my hand on the bad nights. Didn't ask questions I wasn't ready to answer. When we got back, there was a letter waiting, forwarded from my old address. Claire's handwriting on the envelope. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won, like it always did with her. It was short. She said she'd heard about my wedding through mutual acquaintances. She was happy for me. She was sorry for everything. She hoped I could forgive her someday. She signed it with her maiden name, like we were strangers. I threw it away. No response needed. No forgiveness offered or withheld. Just nothing. The absence of feeling where once there'd been love and hurt and anger. I'd finally reached indifference, and it felt like freedom. Last update I got was 6 months ago. Roger texted to say Claire had moved again. Different state, different job, different story probably. She'd met someone new online. Roger was working with his lawyer to prevent her from taking Sophia across state lines. Bruce was dealing with the same issue. They'd filed joint paperwork, presenting a united front. The judge had already expressed concerns about Claire's stability. Moving states with restricted custody wasn't happening, so Claire left alone. Posted about new beginnings and fresh starts. About leaving toxicity behind and choosing happiness. The same old song with slightly different lyrics. I wondered how long before the new place learned who she really was. I'm pregnant now. Jordan and I are having a girl. We've already picked the name, Elena, after my grandmother. Nothing to do with Claire or the shooting or any of that. Just a name we both love for our daughter. Sometimes I think about that other timeline, and the one where Claire stayed by my side through recovery, where she was in my wedding photos, scars and all, where our kids grew up together like we'd always planned. But that timeline required a different Claire, one who existed only in my memories, if she ever existed at all.